Everybody, thank you for joining us for the Safety and Operations briefing. Apologies it's so early, but it's with Nick Careen, our Senior Vice President, Operations, Safety and Security, and it's definitely worth joining. So thank you. Nick, over to you.
I don't know if it's definitely worth joining here. All the keeners up early in the morning, appreciate that. So we'll get right into it. I'm going to briskly go through these things so we can have a conversation about some of it afterwards. I'm sure you've seen this, probably heard it multiple times over the course of the last few days and last few weeks, and you know, we'll continue to grow. We have 5 million passengers in 2024, over 400 million flights. We're still the safest mode of transportation. That's factual. However, we never rest on our laurels in aviation, and there's headwinds. There's things that we need to keep an eye on. You've heard about the supply chain challenges. You've also would have heard about conflict zones. I'll talk about that a little bit. Tighter airspace as a result of that. Some of the staffing challenges, as well as trying to balance all that with sustainability goals and things like GNSS and other things, which I'll touch on as well. So there's things that, I wouldn't say keep us up at night, but certainly keep us focused. So just in sort of some of the numbers, as I said, our stats are good. Last year, we came in at 1.13 accidents per million flights. It's below the 5-year rolling average. 7 fatal accidents in 40.6 million flights. 244 onboard fatalities. That's actually up from 2023. One particular incident drove those numbers up substantially. The fatality risk is at 0.06, which is below the 5-year average as well. And when you look at over 10 years, the 5-year average accident rate used to be 1.41 per 56,000 flights. Now it's down to 1 per 810,000 flights. So all going in the right direction. And worthy of note, and we often reference it, IATA carriers are substantially better in terms of the performance in this area compared to non-IATA carriers. So 0.92 per million flights versus 1.70. So if you look at it, we're regional. There's a bit of variation here, especially in one particular location and one location which we don't have any real data to speak to. So in North America, it's 1.2. It's below the 5-year average, and most of the issues in North America in 2024 were tail strikes and runway excursions. Asia Pac, no real trend there. 1.04, it's down below the 5-year rate, and kind of mixed bag of issues: runway damage, turbulence, and tail strikes. Africa jumps off the page at 10.59. It's deteriorated from the 5-year rate, and most of the accidents were related to runway excursions and landing gear, and over 40% of them are on turboprops. So there's a lot that needs to be done in the African continent. Middle East and North Africa, rates are good, no trends there, although they're one that struggles the most with GNSS interference. I'll speak about that. Commonwealth of Independent States, we really lack data, so it's hard to make any real assumptions on what's happening. We'll have to adjust our data when things go back to or normalize there, whenever that may take place. Europe is flat at 1.02. They do have a few accidents and incidents, obviously, tail strikes being the #1 cause. North Asia, lowest of all, 0.13 versus 0.16, and nothing happening. I think they have 1 tail strike, which is basically the incident that's being categorized. And then in Latin America and Caribbean, 1.77 down from 2, and tail strikes being the biggest issue in that region as well. So pretty common along that front. So we harp on this. I think this is probably the third or fourth time I've referenced it in this group, but also in others as well. Can't get any better unless we learn from incidents and accidents. Simple as that. And the fact is, we're not as good as we should be. So the standards are clear. 30 days after, you're required to provide a preliminary report, and 12 months later, you should have the report completed. That does not happen consistently. It's gotten better since we started harping on it, but it's still not where it needs to be. So we have 107 investigations that have not been complete from 2018 to 2023. 234 lives were lost in those accidents. So it's really a dereliction of duty of the states for not completing this. So we will continue to hammer at it because the insights are incredibly important. Cite multiple examples of where we learn from these. We have some on a list, but I have a couple personal. One was a Dryden air crash in Air Ontario in 1989, which changed the way we handled winter operations procedures. It also introduced co-dispatch, commercial pressure, so it changed regulations. I also was on shift the night that Swiss Air crashed in Halifax, and that changed a lot of things too, as well, around fire suppression, as well as how to handle situations after the fact, in particular with first responders. So these things are incredibly important. So we're not beating the drum because we're going to pick on a stat that's not performing well. This is really important for us to continue to learn, because you can't prevent the next one from happening without understanding why one happened in the first place. We talk about this a lot. This is an issue. It grows. We had 2 incidents this year where we lost lives, one in Kazakhstan and one in Sudan, with 38 fatalities. It's not good enough. And everybody is responsible for this. The OEMs, I'll talk about in a second, what needs to happen. But it's growing. Airspace should not be used as a retaliatory tool, but it is. And we've seen some significant issues as a result of it, whether that's operational challenges, that could be in terms of increased cost, complexity, or just simply not being able to operate the route at all. Russia is a classic example of the impact that's had on many carriers that are unable to operate in those areas. Just to put a finer point on it, this is a snapshot 2023. On a daily basis, you can see anywhere from up to 2,000 flights that were rerouted or canceled as a result of the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. This airspace was closed, sanctions on Russian airspace and other areas from Europe, North America. We saw a sharp rise in impact. 6% of flights in the total daily network were impacted because of this. And a quote from the European air traffic flows that they've never seen this before. Data. So again, I don't think there's a session that happens anywhere on the planet now that doesn't reference the use of data. It's everywhere and everything, no matter what we do. And we're not immune to it either. Although we sit on mounds and mounds of data, we haven't used it to the best extent possible. We're getting better, and we're trying to be the catalyst of that, among others. So we're looking at opportunities to optimize flight planning, opportunities for predictive maintenance, opportunities around safety risk management by using data. We're leveraging our data to help out our decision making, and we're also using data as an example from a turbulence standpoint. So basically, using data will move us from predictive to from reactive to predictive. We're lucky. We built. It's been years and years of activity and sales pitches and getting our airlines to understand the benefits of it. So IATA actually sits on the leading source of aviation data when it comes to operational and safety information. We call it GATM, and it's based on 4 main areas. FDX, I'll talk about that in a second. IDX, I'll also mention that in a second. MCX, which is really maintenance cost information, which airlines anonymize and share with each other so they can see how they're performing versus their counterparts. And accident data, which I've just spoken about earlier. Oh, I should go back. So on the FDX side, it's right now in 2024 we took in 30 million flights, 9,000 aircraft. For the first quarter of this year, we're at 8 million flights, so we'll surpass the 30 million threshold from last year. Probably finish the year around 32, 33 million, probably covering somewhere around 10,000 flights. FDX data comes from the aircraft itself, and it monitors hundreds of parameters per second. So this makes it the most comprehensive and authoritative collection of global aviation data there is. On the incident data side, this is a give-to-get system where the airlines provide their incident information, and again, anonymized, so they can compare, you know, am I having as many tail strikes in certain locations as someone else? Am I getting as many GNS failures in certain locations compared to someone else? Those types of things, which makes us unique, because if you look at the way a regulatory body looks at it, they're only looking at it in their own jurisdiction. We look at it globally. And we're also, this year, we'll be adding flight operations exchange, which will include load planning information, flight planning information, and we'll put all that into the techies call it, a data lake, and we'll be able to use artificial intelligence and other tools to be able to extrapolate different information from that. And we've gotten pretty good at this, to the point that we just won an award at the Data IQ Grand Prix for innovation. So we're going to keep plugging at this for good reason. So one area where, and you've heard this topic quite a bit for all kinds of reasons, but you know, one area that we are using data to help is to improve on safety turbulence, or turbulence related to safety. Turbulence is not a fun event. Anyone that's experienced it knows that. Severe turbulence is extremely rare, but it does happen. And you know, it is the leading cause of incidents and accidents on board aircraft. And you know, currently, and in the old days, you know, pilots would use weather forecasts. They would use information provided them from ATC, and they'd also use what they used to call, and they still use, pilot reports or PIREPs to help manage their way around the different pockets of turbulence, but there's still no way to detect clear air turbulence. So the more information you got, the better you are. So I've mentioned this before. We started this program in 2018. It's a data-driven insight sharing tool. Provides real-time view for those that are on the platform, so flight crew can mitigate and change their course, can put on seatbelt signs, can advise their customers, can tell the crew to sit down, etc. So just some more information at their fingertips to be able to make appropriate decisions as they go. It continues to grow. We just added 3 new airlines: Air France, Etihad, and Air Premia. There's a total of 28 airlines on the program at the moment, and 2,700 aircraft contributing data, which we share amongst them to provide a better and safer operation. So GPS jamming, GNSS interference, spoofing and jamming is often the referred upon tools. We see this grow. So just to explain the chart, the blue line represents the GPS loss rate measured by the number of GPS loss events per 1,000 flights. And the gray bar shows the total number of flights recorded each year in the millions. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see where we're headed. The numbers speak for themselves, and frankly put, the number of incidents are increasing. We need support from the OEMs. There is technology available. We need to start extrapolating and making use of it. So aircraft manufacturers need to step up. They also need to step up in terms of procedures. Right now, every individual airline basically develops their own procedures on how to deal with these events. Whether that's a reset in flight, which is what some do, some others do other things. We need better infrastructure planning to help minimal operational networks that can avoid the interference, which is coming primarily from military operations. And we need global coordination from ICAO, which has been absent. We need to look at future-proofing navigation technologies, which had to be done in conjunction with the OEMs, and develop standard protocols, as I mentioned, for states and flight crews to avoid interference in the future. I'm not going to beat this one up too much, because I think if there was any one theme that came out of the AGM, this would be one of them. Supply chain is a problem. In some cases, it's getting a little bit better, and I think you may have heard that, but it's still nowhere near where it needs to be. And just looking at the aircraft delivery, you can see it in the slides here. So we peaked at 2018, 1,800 aircraft. We're planning to be at 1,800 again in 2026. I'll take any bet, anyone in this room that wants to bet with me whether or not that we meet that number, because I doubt it. The first quarter looked okay, second quarter softened, so our deliveries that are predicted for this year we won't hit. So it's a problem for new aircraft. It's also a problem for engines. So the quote or the stats usually is somewhere around almost 4% of the fleet under 10 years is sitting on the ground. Why are they sitting on the ground? Engines. But it's not just engines. Some airlines are taking aircraft without seats in them. It's a plethora of challenges around aircraft, but engines is the one that sticks out the most, and one in particular, the Pratt & Whitney 1000G. There's a lot of challenges around that particular engine type. So utilization has gone through the roof. We've exceeded 2019 levels in terms of aircraft utilization. So that puts a lot of pressure on the operation. Minimum turn times, minimum touch times. So the impact of that is felt throughout the entire airline. So it's certainly something that we're keeping a close watch on. And like I said, in some cases we're seeing it improve a little bit, but we're certainly not out of the woods. Obviously, supply chain pressures on maintenance. So we see, maintenance is a challenge. It's complex. The supply chain is complex. We've got skilled labor shortages. We've got technical inefficiencies. So we've got poor forecasting. You order an airplane today. Has always been not as accurate as it should be, but it is now very unpredictable. When you order an aircraft today, your guess is as good as mine when you are actually going to receive it. But it's certainly going to be somewhere between 3 to 5 years is what you're going to be told, and it may exceed that. MRO demand spike because a result of the aging fleet we're operating puts a big pressure on them. We have a raw material shortage, which we've seen the tit for tats and tariffs and other things that are taking place, as well as the shortage of titanium, which is the beginning of the Ukraine-Russian conflict, because most of it was coming from there. So we've got strong parts demand and lack of alternatives. So it's a real challenge. So one thing that the industry has been doing more of is teardowns. What is that? Parting out airplanes, basically. So ones you're not operating, looking for opportunities to be able to use those parts to help supply or provide supply. Just to put a sort of number on it, the commercial aircraft disassembly market in 2023 was around $8 billion. In 2033, we're expecting it to be almost double, at close to $15 billion. We have a product, it's called MRO Smart Hub, and just in the last couple of years, we've been participating in 270 teardown projects, as a result, offering more than 250,000 spare parts in the program to allow for airlines to be able to take advantage of that. Now, we have one specific example where Careen in the teardown of a 737-300. They connected with 45 airlines. There was 2,000 bids almost, and around 586 parts. And the bids received from APUs, and landing gear, cabineters, aircraft skin for upcycling. So the revenue actually exceeded the teardown costs, which is why you're seeing that market increase. How could you have a safety discussion without bringing up lithium batteries? It always seems to crop up. This time it's the power banks, primarily. I think a few points. Lithium batteries, part of dangerous goods, covered regulatory. It's has strong global guidance. Airlines are trained and equipped to manage the risks. Passengers obviously need to play a critical role. So, you know, when you check in and when you fly back tomorrow, don't just scroll through that thing and say, do you know about your private items? Because I bet you if I gave a test right now, no one would pass it. But you need passengers play a role as well to educate themselves. But by and large, the system works. When it doesn't work is when we see knee-jerk reactions. And we've seen some of that. Some of it has been by regulators, as a result of 2 specific incidents. And some of it's from airlines which have used their risk assessments or felt that it was necessary to implement something which is against the sort of standard approach that we're recommending at the moment. So, any changes that should occur should actually come through a regulatory review through ICAO, which is in discussions at the moment, but no plans to change current procedures as they exist today. Here we go. Guidance is pretty simple. Pack light. Only to bring the devices and batteries you need. Don't bring your 10, 11 battery packs for your 10-hour flight because you're afraid you're going to lose connectivity. Stay alert. Now keep an eye on your device. If it's getting hot, if it's smoking or damaged, let the crew know. You think that would be obvious, but sometimes not so obvious. Keep your devices with you. Always carry phones, laptops, cameras, and other battery-powered items in your hand baggage. Never in your checked baggage. And I'm pretty sure if we did a survey on how many people follow that rule, we probably would be surprised as well. But it increased risk. Protect loose batteries. Keep spare batteries and power banks in their original packaging as much as possible. And cover the battery terminals with tape to prevent short circuits. Gate check reminders. If your hand baggage is taken, pull your stuff out, just like your medication. And check the battery sizes, because there are regulations and rules around how big you can take. So anything more than 100 watt hours is not allowed, which again is something that I think we need to do more in terms of education and providing guidance on to ensure that our customers are fully aware of the risks associated with this. So now I said a brief risk, I think it was kind of. We are safe, we are sound, but government still needs to step up in terms of airspace usage, not using it as a tool of coercion. It should be neutral, and that's will be something that we maintain to be. Governments need to give us timely information on accident reports so that the industry can learn from them. OEMs need to step up in many places. I hope we're beginning to see that, as I mentioned, but certainly not out of the woods. And data, and more data. So, with that, thanks very much, and happy to take any questions you may have. Stories you want to tell. Except for you, actually, we're not going to take your question.
Sorry, yeah. Go ahead if you have a mic. Go ahead if you have a mic.
Hi Nick, this
Hi.
is Abhijit with Reuters. Thanks for the great meeting. So a couple of questions I just wanted to ask. What can IATA say about the rights of crew and pilots who refuse to fly in these conflict zones? So is it becoming a growing issue for airlines? And how is the industry responding to that? That's one. And second is, you must have read about the incident in India where an Indigo flight was forced to go through a storm, basically a hailstorm. because it was traveling close to the India-Pakistan border, and it wasn't allowed to enter Pakistan airspace, and it couldn't go around the storm. So what ideally should have been done in that situation? If you have any comments, that would be very great.
Okay. Flight crew refusals are normal. It's not just from conflict zones. It happens weather. You know, I've been around this patch for over 30 years, and we've had more incidents where flight crew were not necessarily comfortable traveling or flying in certain weather conditions and issues around conflict. However, it does happen. Majority of airlines, in fact, I'd say especially those that are IATA carriers, which there's 450 of them, the flight crew has the right to refuse. And quite frankly, most airlines, in fact, I would say the vast majority of them, do not want crew on an aircraft that they don't feel comfortable flying. That would be an operational concern, but also from a safety standpoint, it would not make sense. So I don't, and any of our advocates or groups, working groups, or flight operations group has not raised this as something that they think we need to do something different with. And you know, we promote safety leadership charter. We're vastly reaching 300 airlines that have participated in it. That's all about safety culture, and this is part of it as well. So I don't sense that there's anything extra that we need to do at this point. In terms of reroutes, it happens. Certainly, you know, I wouldn't overreact to one incident. Sometimes it happens. It was perhaps an error in judgment. What could they have done? I guess they could have returned. But I'd have to have more specifics around the incident itself and the decisions that the pilot would have made at the time, and as well as ATC to avoid a conflict zone. But you know, if they were avoiding a conflict zone, there's probably a good reason for that. And I think we've seen what was happening at the time, and losing an airplane in flight as a result of that would be far more catastrophic than the incident that ensued as a result of flying through hail. But again, I don't have the exact specifics of it, and I'm 100% confident that the team and our Indigo have analyzed this and have reviewed it, and if there was anything that needed to be done, they would have communicated with their flight crew.
Yeah, just a gentleman here, just somebody with.
Morning. My name is Yufeng from the Straits Times in Singapore. So I have just two questions. One is on the issue of final reports not being published in time. Speaking in the context of Singapore Airlines, you know, the turbulence in last year, it's the first anniversary recently, and they were saying, you know, the government was saying that they need to wait for testing of certain parts of the weather radar system before they can come out with a final report. So I'm wondering if you provide some color as to what are some of the reasons why governments are not publishing accident reports in time? Is it because of a testing delay, or is it other reasons?
I think the mic's not on.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I got it though.
Yeah.
And I got a second question, sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll read
Is it working now? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Second question is on the Turbulence Aware platform. Wondering if there's any updates on the efficacy of the platform, whether or not it's led to reductions in turbulence encounters or, you know, that kind of thing. Thank you.
So the first one, in terms of why there would be reasons for lack of reporting, is quite a few of them. Sometimes, especially in Western markets, labor can play a big part of that. Sometimes it's a jurisdiction that does not really want to communicate because it's sensitive. Sometimes it's technical, where they simply do not have something to communicate. And in those cases, there's a process to update every 12 months on the anniversary. And that's not as consistent as it could be either, because it's okay if you don't know. You know, there are incidents out there we simply do not know. I think there's a few of them that would come to mind immediately. I mean, 17 is probably one of them, or 370. So it happens, but and sometimes for good reasons. And we're willing to accept the good reasons. Is when we don't get a reason, that's when there's a problem. In terms of turbulence aware, we're not capturing avoidance. We're taking feedback from the user group, and the feedback is that it's a useful tool. we should start tracking potential avoidance, but it's hard to measure because if, you know, and if the system identifies that there's a turbulence, clear turbulence at flight level 380, and the aircraft that's 1,000 miles behind avoids it or uses the information to put seatbelt sign on and don't hit it, doesn't necessarily mean we could get false reports that said we are actually better at this than we are. And we don't want to get into the game of, oh, look how good this thing is and this is preventing turbulence, because it's not just that. It's more about providing information for flight crew to be able to supplement their decision making.
Just a quick follow-up.
On the accident report bit, is there things that governments can do to speed up, from IATA's point of view?
Say that again?
Are there things that the governments can do to speed up publishing kind of reports, for accidents?
Yeah, they do their job. Governments aren't good at doing their jobs, right? That's a fact. It's not just this. Not that I'm anti-government or anything.
I'll take a question on this side of the room.
Hi, this is Neha from Hindustan Times. I wanted to add on and ask a question on turbulence. Do you think there is a requirement of an overall kind of guidelines for a cockpit crew to handle a situation like a hailstorm? Thank you.
There already is, there would be procedures to handle incidents where it's, you know, hailstorm would be probably similar, very similar to a severe turbulence event. They would have instructions to change flight level, to try to get out of the where they are, you know, from a situational standpoint. And every airline would have, you know, pretty similar procedures in terms of how to deal with it. Sometimes it can happen where it's unexpected, and things can escalate rapidly, but they always manage to get it back under control as well. Are you talking specifically about the incident with Indigo?
I wanted to understand on a regulator level, do you think that there is a requirement where, you know, the regulator could come up with some certain guidelines so that it is easier or unanimously can be done by the airlines for the respective countries?
I think the guidance is pretty good. You know, this has not come up in any regulatory discussions that I've been involved in the last 10 years at IATA, and the 20 some odd years prior to that with Canadians and American regulators, which is where I hung out. It's not on anyone's radar. It's a good question, but it certainly has not come up.
I will go to Chris, or yeah. And then we'll go back to Robert.
Hi. On the lithium batteries, I think you mentioned 2 incidents in particular. What were they exactly? And the main sort of thing we tend to hear in the cockpit about, in the cabin about batteries these days is, especially if you're in a premium cabin, for God's sake, don't try and move your seat to retrieve your phone if you drop it. I mean, when did that emerge as sort of a universal concern? I guess if you drop it in economy class, you can usually reach it fine. Whereas if you drop it in the business seat and you move it and then you start crushing your phone and God knows what happens, is that the concern? And then beyond that, if someone's taking your hand baggage off you and chucking it in the hold, there must be a worry that quite a few phones end up in, and other items end up in the hold without anyone knowing. I suppose people might retrieve their phones, but statistically that must happen. Yeah?
So the 2 incidents, one in Singapore, one in Korea, both different, one in flight, one on the ground. The one on the ground was a complete hull loss as a result of a fire on board. The other one was a rapid descent and diversion as a result of a fire on board as well. That was what created the sort of consternation around these things. In particular, a complete hull loss, no loss of life, and no severe injuries, but certainly a concern that escalated this to a point where people started to take notice, which is why we saw the Singaporeans put some additional rules in place, as well as the Koreans and a couple of other countries in the ASPAC region. And then we saw some airlines as well follow suit with their own sort of set of guidance. So that's really where this all started. In terms of the seat pack, yeah, it's because it's hard to get at, and it increased the risk if you got customers trying to crawl underneath a seat that may not be able to reach this thing, especially if it poses a hazard like this. So it's just an abundance of caution, really. So that's where that came from, and the majority of airlines have that in place today. And the last question. Oh yeah, it happens. It happens. You know, just like undeclared lithium batteries happen. Nothing's 100%. You know, Swiss cheese. But you know, the goal through a risk management process is to ensure that we capture most of it. And I think in terms of gate checks, there is an education piece that's still required. So we need to make sure that our gate agents understand that when they do that, they make sure they ask the customer questions. Do you have any lithium batteries in your bag? And that's happening, as well as educating customers so they're aware that, hey, okay, I don't mind you taking my bag, but I got a couple of things in there that. And maybe it's a way to make sure that they don't take your bag, but that's just a side note. Yeah, so it happens, but it's something that we continue to educate and communicate on.
Ian Taylor, Travel Weekly. Yeah, it's on the same issue, the batteries. I wonder if there's any research on the level of compliance of passengers with the instructions to have all the devices and so on in their hand luggage. I mean, because you get incidents like this week, the guy took a bag full of snakes on he had 40-odd cobras or something. It seemed incredible in his hand luggage. So I wonder if you have any data on that. And just, I'm sorry I missed the main body of your first remarks, but on the GPS interference, can you just say how the frequency that's happening at the moment and what workarounds there are?
So Catherine will pull up the slide so you can see the rate, incident rate. And in terms of compliance data, not really, no, because there's no real way of measuring it. We're not getting into, we don't check for it when it goes through the whole baggage screening process, which is security driven. It could be an area that it's worth exploring, but that may pose additional challenges because if we start identifying, have security doing more checks, it could end up causing more operational challenges. So at the moment, we're basing it on the number of incidents that we may have in terms of cargo hold problems, whether that is smoldering or even to a further extent fire, which we're not seeing. We had a couple of sensational incidents a few years ago, one with Ethiopian Airlines in China, and then one with Qatar Airways as well, that were lithium battery related, one on the ground and one in the air, but nothing that jumps out. So we're not planning on doing any specific measurement around it at this point in time.
What's Robert?
But I should say there is discussions with the security folks, because if we are going to go down the tangent of lithium battery management, it has to be done at the checkpoint, which we're doing today, and it will have to be done on whole baggage screening as well. So that will take quite some time to get their heads wrapped around that.
And then just I'll move it to the next slide for the GPS jamming solutions, and then if you've got any questions afterwards, but this is what we're calling for. Is that Robert?
Thanks. Robert Silk with Travel Weekly US. On accident investigations, is politicization of the investigation something that you all in the flight safety community monitors? Is this something that happens from time to time depending on what country it might be in? And also wanted to ask, after the Washington DC crash, President Trump quickly speculated on the cause, and subsequently the NTSB, I guess, vice chair has been removed in an unusual step midterm. I'm just wondering if also this is something the safety community and IATA is concerned about, the potential of any politicization of investigations in the United States.
Oh, that's a loaded question. So yes, politicization of investigations is an issue. You know, we had a pretty significant incident a few years ago in China, which we haven't received a final report on. And why is that? Probably cultural, political, and all of the above. So for sure, we also see issues in Russia, lacking clarity sometimes in terms of, and why is that? You know, I don't think you have to do a class on that, I think. But for sure, it is something that we are aware of. But we don't get into the politics of it. We just simply stick to the facts. We you know, the process agreed upon with ICAO, and there's an expectation that it gets done. And so we will address that at the upcoming ICAO assembly again in September to hopefully get their support and continue to work on this with states that are lagging behind. In terms of comments made by politicians, not helpful, for sure. It's not helpful for anyone to actually make comments when an investigation hasn't been completed, especially immediately after it happened. It's not fair to the victims, it's not fair to the crew, it's not fair to the airline, it's not fair to anyone. So certainly we would hope to see that, to discourage that. And in terms of removal of personnel, I have no idea, I don't follow that, wouldn't get involved in that, and there's all kinds of reasons, I'm sure, for why that would have taken place, but we're more interested in making sure that we stick to the facts and allowing the investigation to take place and understand what caused it, and then corrective action is the most important part.
Morning, Nick. How are you? This is Ryan from Aviation Business News. You mentioned the technologies available for the mitigation of spoofing and jamming. Can you describe kind of what are the best ones there right now?
Well,
and as well as that, just you mentioned that OEMs need to support on this. Right now, are airlines kind of bearing the brunt of that?
Well, it's, GPS, right? It's GPS signals. We need alternatives to that. And there are alternatives to those signals, but the equipment that we're currently using today rely on GPS only. That doesn't happen overnight because all aircraft are equipped with basically the same type of systems for this, driven primarily by two suppliers. So this is a technological change is possible, but it's going to take time. And that's the ultimate solution. But in the meantime, we need to focus on procedures and communication, and better coordination between civil and military operations in and around areas of operation, which we completely accept. But there is a way to better manage this to avoid a crossover into civil aviation. And just in terms of the risk itself, the risk primarily, unless you're in a certain phase of flight, which would be landing or takeoff, which we don't see a lot of, is complacency. Because when you get a warning, or terrain warning, or collision warning advice at 38,000 feet, and you know there's nothing around you, and you just reset and reset, when that actually is something you should be aware of, that's what concerns us. No, go ahead. What were you saying?
Hi, I'm Pablo from Aviation News, Argentina. What's your opinion or position about the Turkish civil aviation decision of charging with fines to passengers who unbuckle their seatbelt during taxi?
The rule is simple. I think everyone in the world, anyone that's traveled, has been screamed at once in their life. We're not at the gate, sit down. Okay, it's happened to me. I'm in a hurry to get off. Everywhere in the world, the rule is the same. How an individual government decides to address it, because perhaps there's a singular issue in that jurisdiction, no problem with that. No. If that's what they feel is necessary to make sure that people are following the rules, that's why they did it. They didn't. I don't think someone just dreamed it up. It must be an issue on taxi in that jurisdiction.
But we also don't want to make it more complex for airlines to have to collect these fees, so the burden shouldn't be put on the airlines also.
Exactly.
Yeah, just next, and then we'll go here, and then here, and then I think we'll need to wrap up.
Along a similar theme, Justin from Breaker Travel News, how would you assess the current consistency of the passenger safety experience globally? Are there particular regions where implementation of IATA's safety protocols is notably stronger or weaker? And what steps is IATA taking to ensure, ultimately, I think really, and as a global traveller myself, there's a more kind of uniform, but of course still safe experience for travellers across all markets?
I guess if there was one area that jumps out, and you can see in the report, would be Africa. That's an area. It's primarily in smaller aircraft type, not in the major locations and hubs. We did have one big incident with Juju last year, which was very extremely unfortunate. Happened on landing. I'm not sure how a wall at the end of the runway makes a lot of sense, and passed a IOSA USAP audit, but that's a different discussion. But I think if there's one area that jumps out, it would definitely be the work that's required to make sure that we build up or bring up the safety around certain parts of Africa. And we're doing that, not only us, but we have a program called Focus Africa, and we have a safety program called CASET, which involves not only us, but a number of other partners, including the OEMs, a number of airlines, states that are participants in that. We try to bring up safety. We also use the IOSA safety audit. We're also talking with ICAO to see if we can get some improvements on the USAP audit, which is a little in need of some renewal, let's say. So I think that area is a bit of a place of focus. And I think the Commonwealth of Independent States, we're lacking some data, but in the previous data points in the years before, that was also an area that was an area that required some additional attention, and hopefully we can get to that in the not too distant future when we start to look at some of the past numbers.
Manju from the Times of India. This is again about GPS spoofing and jamming. Now, you don't have separate data for both these things, like separate data for jamming. Spoofing is kind of a pretty recent thing, right? Like maybe 10 years old. And the other thing is jamming largely has to do with military or conflict areas. And is that true of spoofing as well? Or have you seen spoofing happening in other places? The third question on same subject is, the European and the American regulators haven't made it, haven't issued any regulation on asking OEMs to set up procedures for this yet?
So we can split them out if we've been given information to determine or identify the difference between one versus the other. So there would be some, but not. It might not be perfect. So we could potentially provide you with a breakdown between the difference between jamming and spoofing. We tend to look at both the same because the result is the same. In terms of regulatory thrust around this, we have been working primarily with IATA, actually. So we just had a workshop with them just a week prior to this in Cologne. they're very interested. So I would say if you were to pick a regulator that's sort of leading the charge on this, it's them. And so we're expecting to see, we will be doing a follow-up. We should see something from them, a little bit more concrete, hopefully by the end of the year.
But currently they have put the onus on airlines, merely saying that the airlines should inform the pilots.
That's right, yeah. There has been a recognition that there's a technological requirement here, and the other thing is really better coordination on the civil aviation and military use of space. And you asked if it was like happening in other places, not so much. Middle East, which I think wouldn't surprise anybody. Up and down depending on what's going on there. Up right now because of some of the challenges that we're seeing. Eastern Europe, primarily driven by the conflict there, and that's where it's happening.
Did you get reports from India and Pakistan on jamming?
There was some, there was some.
I am Careen from aviation with a couple of questions. First on spoofing. Do you have any data as to how prepared or how many of the member airlines are trained for spoofing, handling spoofing, pilots training, and how prepared are they? And the second question is, assuming there's peace in Russia, how concerned are you with parts that is fit on Russian aircraft, that is gray parts or illegitimate parts coming to the market? Thank you.
All airlines have procedures to deal with it. Like all of it, I can speak for the IATA carriers, which there's 450 of them. They all have procedures to deal with it. They're not all the same though, which is something that we would like to see, and that needs to come from a regulator. That sort of standard regulator and the OEM, not the airlines. But all airlines have procedures. In terms of putting Humpty Dumpty back together again, when we finally see peace in Russia, that isn't going to be easy. And we do know parts traceability, so they have a pretty robust aviation space. I would suggest that they would have records of what they put, what PMA type parts they put on board their aircraft, and they were also, let's not keep our head in the sand. They were getting real parts from other ways. Like this, whether it's been transparent to us or not is a different story. But so there will have to be a well thought out mechanism to allow for those aircraft to be introduced back into certain markets, as they are flying into many markets today. It's more the European and I guess North American markets that would have to have some level of confidence around what has been done in terms of maintenance programs. I would be very shocked if those maintenance programs were not being maintained during this process. In fact, I'm 100% confident that they were.
Okay, thank you everybody for your time. The Watts is starting again at 9, and I think you've probably still got time to grab some food very quickly if you want some more food.
Thanks for getting up early. Appreciate it.